let go of what you know, what you remember of so-and-so. This, that, all that bric-a-brac. You keep it under your hat. Don't let it fly away. It's your yesterday, your only passport to your future life, your husband, your wife, your 100 kids who escaped from that jam jar without a lid. All the bits and pieces that make up you, and memories your only glue. To remember is to pray, I heard him say, and yesterday's tomorrow is today. So, reach inside your head, resurrect the dead. Whatever made you think they'd gone away, if you listen, you will hear silent voices drawing near. And yesterday's tomorrow is today. Yesterday's tomorrow is today.
Passing the Tower of London, 5,000 fascists rally to their mobilization for the much-advertised march through the East End.
The United States is a monster out of control. Unless we challenge it with absolute determination, American barbarism will destroy the world.
The Leader of the Opposition said what the housewives of Australia need to understand as they do the ironing. Thank you for that painting of women's roles in modern Australia.
I've waited too long for justice to be handed down for my people, and it's time for me to make a change in the only way that people are going to listen to me, and I'm going to do it peacefully.
Well, may we say, God save the Queen. Because nothing will save the Governor-General.
My father, Mick. He was the person who had power over me. He was a member of the Hackney Gang, a group of 6 friends that included the Nobel Prize-winning playwright Harold Pinter. Maybe some of you have heard of it. And Henry Wolfe. There he is. He's 91 now and the last one alive. We love Henry. Then there's me. I'm Jeremy. Jeremy Goldstein, son of Mick, son of Bev, son of the Hackney Gang. One of the few and the far between, according to Henry. Harold, Henry, and Mick, they were born and raised within 100 yards of each other in Clapton in East London. Harold was an only child, Henry one of 3, Mick one of 5. His parents, my grandparents, had a baby workshop in Homerton. That's my Uncle Sid. During the war, they were evacuated from the Blitz. Henry, Mick, and Sid, they were sent to live with Madge and Hilda in Upwell near Lincoln. Harold was sent to live in Cornwall. After the war, they returned to London and they became friends for 60 years. In the 1950s, they discovered artists like Louis Buñuel and Samuel Beckett. In 1957, Henry directed Harold's first play, The Room. He was the original Mr. Kidd. In 1955, the 3 of them saw the first performances of Waiting for Godot at the Arts Theatre in London. Waiting for Godot, people. Come on, let's hear it for the boys. Dad died in 2013. I remember reading those words in his obituary, truth to power. That's when I got in touch with Henry. I wanted to know more about their lives, more about that ballet between them, and why those words had become so important to Harold and Mick and the rest of the gang. Henry said they were a bunch of solipsist survivors, larking about the East End, their lives central to the workings of the universe. Just imagine living in London in the 1950s at a time when the Holocaust still loomed, and those bombs had incinerated Nagasaki and Hiroshima as if it were yesterday. They didn't think they would live very long. They thought they might be the last of their generation. Their world, it was infected. But did they agonise over that until the wee small hours, discuss their unhappy fate? No, they were having none of it, not a bit of it. There was no one quite like them, no one the same, bowling down the alleyways ahead of the game, masters of their universe, kings of their parks. They had poems in their pockets and the world up their arse. Ready for an argument, ready for a laugh, ready for the world to try and cut them in half.
Uh-oh, here come the fascists. There go the cops. Better sidle down a side street till the aggro stops.
But love is on the menu, knocking on the door. Lovely girls with dreamy eyes, but there's something more. Somewhere in the bloodstream there is something more. A singular equation, a riddle me read. Bound them together and set them free.
A subterranean signal we knew we could trust, deeper than desire and that old tart lust.
Reaching out over continents, years and miles apart, they never squeezed their juices dry or shriveled up their hearts.
We were solipsist survivors with our lives in our heads, and when we heard each other's voices, we were watered and fed. When we heard each other's voices, we came back from the dead.
The gang wrote each other constantly. Poems, plays, letters, you name it. Harold even captured their lives in his one and only novel, The Dwarfs. Metaphorically speaking, the dwarfs symbolise the difference between what is real and what is unreal, what is true and what is false. That dark glass on the other side of the lake. He wrote me about them in 2002. Dear Jeremy, I've read what you sent me about the dwarfs. Henry and I still have the original typed scripts. What's all this about I'm organising to see it soon? Why not just plain I'm seeing it soon? Perhaps your secretary needs to take a basic course in English. When it was written, I had many different jobs as distinct from Henry. I worked as a porter on Euston Station and clearing the tables at the open-air cafes in Regent's Park Zoo. I had many other jobs, too numerous to mention. I never lasted very long in any of them. I never considered myself a normal-waged working man, and I don't think Harold did either. Later, things changed, of course. I grew up, but I never knew who or what, if anything, I was looking for. Certainly not wealth or security. I found uplifting moments in music, literature, or cricket. But over the years, my feelings for Harold have grown, and he remains, after all, one of the very few of my friends. Now, your question about whether I had delusions about dwarfs is irrelevant. They are manifested in the novel and then in the play. They are what they are. Somewhere, behind a door, there were these dwarfs. Just as in the desert over the next heap of sand, there is a harem of beautiful women. I have seen the dwarfs. I have seen their newspapers, their apple cores and potato peelings, their dead fetuses in their formaldehyde, the axle grease, the broken alphabet, their carcinomas and sarcomas, a bookend, a talus minim, a broken string, gaskets, dud valves. I have seen their rancid sweets. The sun blinded them, and the moon made them moan. The truth is a precipice, a grave into which we all fall into eventually. We are on a downward path. Love, Dad. He was right about one thing. The truth, it is a grave. We all fall into it eventually. He knew. He was in it. 1, 2, 3, up!
He put cobwebs on my pillow, crap on my floor. He's my lousy indoor flower. I can't take it anymore. I scream it out the window. I shout it out the door. He's my lousy indoor flower. I can't take it anymore. 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 I'm standing at the center of the turning world. Nothing exists until my brain uncurls. If love comes calling, is it wearing a dress? If it sets my mind on fire, I couldn't care less. When they sidle up the staircase, take over your brain. You've become a willing victim, just do that again. No cobwebs on the pillow, no crap on the floor. I've become his indoor flower, who could ask for more? But look under the mattress, who's that flat on the floor? I'm the boy in the bangles, I don't live here no more. I put cobwebs on my pillow, crap on my floor. He's yesterday's flower, I can't take it anymore. Bring down the window, slam the front door. No good tapping on the window, I don't live here no more. They turn out to be strangers, a million miles apart. Love may leave you bruised and battered, but you can grow a new heart. I put cobwebs on my pillow, crap on my floor. I've become my indoor flower, the one that I adore, 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 the one that I adore.
Dad and I, we would fight. Boy, how we would fight. It was almost always over the most pettiest of grievances, and I always thought that I was the one to blame. That made me feel like a loser. I couldn't overcome my feelings of shame, failure, self-loathing. He broke my heart. He had become my Black Knight. After years of arguing over who did what to whom, the money, the drink, the divorce, we were estranged and not speaking. In 2012, he developed a brain tumor, and I discovered large clumps of Kaposi sarcoma lesions all over my legs. I grew up in the 1980s, at a time when the KS, the Kaposi sarcoma, were known as the kiss of death from AIDS. Dad, he was the first person I ever told. That was in 1999. I remember him rolling his eyes as if to say, well, son, it was bound to happen sooner or later. 20 years. HIV. I had become very ill. My marriage was breaking up. I was practically bankrupt, unemployable. For 3 years, I ended up on chemo, smoking meth to numb the pain, the money, the meth, the divorce. I had been erased by my own father, and I wanted to kill myself. In a rare moment of sobriety, I wrote him. I did. I wrote him in an effort to try and patch things up. Sadly, my letter arrived the day he died, and he never got to read it. Our lives forever frozen in the past, and I was the one who had to live with it. But as time went on, I was surprised to discover that he wanted to become a writer. But such was his loyalty to Harold and Henry and the rest of the gang that it was his pride that prevented him from risking failure in front of his best friends. I finally understood. We don't always grow up to be the person we want to be. And my father was never a man that could look in the mirror and say, "This is who I am." This had made him a frustrated man. His burden cast a shadow, and I was the one that he took it out on. As time went on, I was surprised to discover that our relationships with our loved ones continue to evolve, even in death. The dead, they may be invisible, but they are not absent. They live on. They live on inside of us. Eventually, I got myself clean, and I just let all of that go, and I did, and I discovered a love and empathy for my father I never experienced when he was alive. For the very first time in my life, I began to feel like a winner. And my father, Mick, he finally became my hero. These days, speaking truth to power is widely accepted to mean saying something to those in a position of trust or authority who don't want to hear it. Is it to your lover, your brother, your sister, your boss, your banker, your best friend, yourself, your mother, your father? Is it an act of love or an act of war? Who has power over you, and what do you want to say to them?
I'm the product of hope and perhaps a few cocktails. My unexpected arrival secured my position as a son who lays his bones in the home of the brave. Along with the nationalistic bravado, I am a first-generation child of Zimbabwean and Zambian heritage. I am a pioneer for a family legacy, whether I like it or not. In the mirror, there's a reflection of a student of life wading through the mountainous void that we call life. My reflection bears my mother's eyes, two deep pools of festering ambition, an ambition that brought her to the land of the free from a corn farm, home to one of the seven wonders of the world. But when I walk out my home, a burden sets in, reminding me that my identity can be altered, my heritage, whether I like it or not. My pigment takes the helm of what I am instead of who I am. I'm a child of immigrant parents, and I say this with grace. I kindly ask for the oppressive boot to lay off my neck before the lamb becomes a lion. No matter the mental shackles that anchor my identity through a weathering storm of ignorance, the brave and the bold hold all grounds against the tsunami of ignorance. We are a steeping pot, a steeping brew that's boiled over, scolding those who assume the boiling pot cannot pose a threat to those who believe we couldn't even steep under heat. The misguided, the disenfranchised would rule the house of law and order. emulating the 300 and 400 years of systematic oppression. Rationing equality in one's favor would be child's play. And we would teach understanding for one another. All I ask for you is to see my face, my character, and my color in that order. See me as an investment. See me as a person. See me as a human instead of potential state property. See my progression of what I have inherited, a deeply rich heritage. Don't define me by any circumstance of what I portray just because of the color of my skin.
See me through my eyes or don't see me at all. Don't check what my feelings to determine if I'm male. I'm not an action man figure made for hypermasculinity purposes. Declaration of my male identity should be enough. If you can't look past the body parts I don't have or the scars on my chest to see me as a man, that is on you. I shouldn't have to display my identity like a cringy talent show to receive legal recognition. Sometimes paying with my dignity and money isn't enough. The media is even to blame, with men claiming roles for trans women and vice versa. It needs to move towards the normalisation of trans people and leave behind the idea that we're just playing a part. It is not just myself that I've had to battle with in order to belong, but others too, including being forced to use the disabled toilets at my first job. To others who aren't trans, this may not seem like a big deal, but to me, to people like me, it is everything. We have spent years working up the courage to put our happiness first. Why would you want to deny us of that? Trouble with our society is the pressure to fit in. And rather than be content with ourselves, we tear down those who don't conform. I'm a trans man, and for the first time in my life, I'm okay with that. Life is difficult to define, but I'm no less of a man due to the body I was born in. My mum used to say to me, "What if you're trans?" Because when I was pregnant, I wanted a boy. For a long time, my response was if only it were that simple. I used to hate being trans, but having been on testosterone for 3 years and had chest surgery, there is nothing that can be held over my head anymore. I can blend into the crowd as one of the guys, or use my privilege as a man to speak up and make a difference. It's sad it has to be this way, but no good has ever come from sitting in silence.
My abusive stepfather had the audacity to die during my biggest performance week. Didn't they ever wonder why I'd shake all over every time he was near pulling into myself? Why I left home at 16 to live away at college? And why at 20, as soon as I graduated college, I moved in with the guy I had just recently started dating. Initially, I interpreted the uncanny timing of his death as another form of abuse. Instead, I chose to believe that it was his way of apologizing. If given the chance, I'd tell him that his quote unquote apology in no way can make up for the lifelong damage that he caused. How sick of a man to wield his power on a helpless young child. Well, I'm not helpless anymore, as I have developed ways to diffuse power over me, whether from him or anyone else. So take that, Mr. Abuser.
The question in front of us today is, who has power over you and what do you want to say to them? I struggled with this question a little bit. I mean, where to start? In 2020, there's an embarrassment of shitness out there, an unending flow, it seems, of bigots and charlatans in high places, fascists, swindlers with their hands on the wheel, perverters of justice and debasers of public discourse. I think that last one is why I've really struggled with this question, because what's the point of saying anything to people who reject the very idea of good faith discourse, who make a point of ignoring or misrepresenting anything they don't want to hear, or that challenges their pursuit of power and wealth? What can you say to people who make refusing to listen a point of principle? So I tried to come at the question from another angle. I thought, who else has power over me? And I thought, everyone, all the people that I meet in my daily life, my neighbours, the people I work with, family members, people in shops, on streets, on the phone, at the doorstep, people we organise with. They have power over me because we all have power over each other. We're all connected. So what would I say? Just things that might make that world feel a little bit more loving. Hello, how are you feeling? You look so nice. Thank you for helping me. Can I help you? I'm glad we're together. What would you like? What power do we have? What should we change?
Capitalism has power over me and everyone on this planet. How can it be right that the richest 1,000 people in Britain have a combined personal wealth of over £760 billion at a time when nearly 1 million Britons are dependent on food banks? How can it be right that billionaires across the globe have total assets worth 10 trillion US dollars, and during the COVID pandemic they've increased their wealth by nearly 30%, at a time when nearly 800 million people on this planet are either hungry or malnourished, lack safe clean drinking water, and don't have adequate clean sanitation? How can it be right that the 60 richest individuals on earth have a combined wealth that equals the wealth of the poorest 50% of the world's population? That is, of the poorest 3,500 million people, at a time when people across the globe are dying needlessly from preventable diseases like malaria, TB, and HIV. Capitalism is so wrong, and I want to do my bit to help change it.
Like a wild current sweeping us out to sea, chronic ill health has allowed poverty to get a grip of me. Don't you think we need a life raft to help us weather the storm? But the current benefits system is so broken that it's wrong. The laws and regulations need to do a better job at serving justice to everyone and not just some involved. With this daily struggle that barely feels like life, I'm not sure it's surviving either. I just know we all need to thrive. So to those who have the power, compassion is the key. When putting in place the sturdy rock that would let us all break free and soar above all limits that keep us stuck in place in dark and dingy waters where life has no grace, of ensuring that society's just and drafting in measures new. I implore you to remember, life changes in the blink of an eye, and anything can happen to you too.
You don't realize it yet, but you will. You have no power, no autonomy, no control, and definitely no freedom. You're trapped in a world that you think is the same as 20 years ago. But in truth, nothing is remotely the same. 20 years ago, you had access free to the internet. 20 years ago, you had an education that came free. A university education taught you how to think and not what to think. Today, you're forced to give away your most valuable asset, data. Just last year, The Economist said data was more valuable than oil. Today, we live in a world of monopolies. Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, where you give them your time, your labor, your content, all for free, and then still pay them to make them richer still. Today, rather than technology aiding you as it was intended to, it's enslaved you. You've been programmed to think that work is good, money is essential, poverty an inevitable byproduct, and capitalism is the only system that works. So break your chains of this technological slavery. Step away from the internet and your triggering mobile devices. And the benefits? Well, the benefits will be real life. And never forget, you are the power of change.
When we scream the names of those murdered at the hands of the cops, you don't listen. When we call our government officials to commit to justice, you don't listen. And when we vote, you don't listen. So I ask, what does it take to make Black Lives Matter? I demand all power to the people. I demand that power is put in the hands and fingers of Black, queer, women abolitionists. I demand that you listen. I demand that the system puts people first over uniforms, status, and money. We've been marching in the street for 192 days chanting Breonna Taylor's name. And we've been marching. A badge and a gavel cannot reflect the resilience of our dark Black skin. A human life is worth more than $12 million. And don't think that your hush money will take away from the fact that you ran into her home and shot her in her bed. I do not believe in your definition of justice. It's fabricated and obstructed. Whose bootstraps provide upward mobility when I'm buffaloed, chanting that every and all Black lives matter? A broken system doesn't need a Band-Aid. What do you have to say for yourself, Mr. America, behind your white picket fence? You do not know humanity if you don't know how to value lives that don't look like your own. Me and the revolutionaries live at an intersection of oppressions where the cops don't care if we make it home safe. This isn't a question to fill in on your ballot of whether your favorite color is red, white, or blue. The Black, queer, women abolitionists are creating a new system. The funny thing is when you try to attack us from every angle, we will prove once again that we're indestructible. We've crafted a new society where the homeless are fed and housed, the youth are listened to instead of folks with money, and our members are accounted for and accountable. No more soul selling to get your basic necessities or human rights. We demand a better collective instead of working from this notion that you have to stomp on every other person to get on top. We demand the beginning of equity and justice. No more hands up, don't shoot bullshit. We're gonna fight back. And don't worry, we will keep us safe. We have been locked in on upheaving the shitty, racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, all the isms that the system upholds. One day, and I mean one day soon, all power will be in the hands and the fingers like a tightly gripped brick of Black, queer, women abolitionists.
You've got to slide between the living and the dead. Open up that window in your head. Take the world, shake it, crush it, remake it. Open up that window in your head.
When the moon invades your soul, you want to scream. You're the iceberg in the centre. You're that old bitch dementia. When the moon invades your soul, you want to scream.
When they pull your heartstrings out, it's only love. It's a mix of joy and pain, but you'll come alive again. When they pull your heartstrings out, it's only love. What's that drumbeat? What's that thunder? It's my dad. He went down under, knocking on the door of wonder that never ever ceased to exist inside his creaking heart.
I'm the genie in the bottle. I'm your engine at full throttle. I'm racing down your every road in sight.
To make love, we don't need beds. We'll tear the world to shreds, racing down every road in sight. Different gardens, different flowers, diamond caves and silver towers. Draw those curtains, disappear. We won't hear, we won't hear. The only makeshift angels are ourselves. My tattered wings made from the garbage of my heart. You've got to slide between the living and the dead. You've got to open up that window in your head. Take the world, shake it, crush it, remake it. Open up that window in your head. Blow our trumpets, angels. Blow our trumpets, angels. Blow our trumpets, angels.
Just for one day, we can be heroes. Just for one day, and you can be me, and I'll drink all the time. 'Cause we're lovers, and that is a fact. Yes, we're lovers, and that is that. Though nothing will keep us together, we could still die. Just for one day.